True Story Media.
This episode contains mature themes and can be difficult for some listeners. Please see the show notes for details and resources. Some names and details have been changed.
We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pop, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
So I got a message from a woman named Cash. She writes, I have 1,000,001 stories from foster care. One in particular was from the picture-perfect family, but it was the worst years of my life. Then, of course, the biological mom always has a part. I only knew pieces of her, and she's still a black hole I am trying to avoid in some aspects. I've realized that my life's mission wasn't social justice as I thought. It's been to not be like her.
There was some anticipation that something was happening. Up until that point, we had come home and, our whole house was in disarray. And everything was burglarized. We couldn't go inside. We were scared. We've been at home and, bangs on the door and we would have to go hide in the closet. We've had a lot of trauma in this apartment.
Cash doesn't remember much about her biological mother, but she remembered that night.
And I remember all of the children were away and we pulled up and it was a sea of cop cars and maybe 10 or so.
It was winter and 6-year-old Cash looked out the window of the car at their apartment building, the place where she and her 4 siblings had played, fought, and grown together.
The person I was with had parked on the side and knew what was happening. And we just watched. We saw all these SWATs and policemen going in and out of the apartment. I just remember someone saying, "Oh, your mom's in the back of that police car." And I just saw the outline of somebody.
I'm Brittany Yard. You probably think this story's about you. But this story belongs to Cash. I understand the difficulty of having a mother who struggles. My own mom battled addiction and mental health issues. I know that growing up without being able to count on the one person that you're supposed to be able to can leave deep echoes in your life. My mom wasn't present in my life after I was 13, but even before that, she wasn't someone that I could rely on. While Cash's mom wasn't an addict, she doesn't know her mom's full history. Cash was only 6 when her and her siblings were removed from that life, leaving her with fragmented pieces of her mother's history. There was neglect, and that neglect is something that I relate to. Her mom was involved in selling drugs, and as Cash put it, chased a fast lifestyle at any cost. Ultimately, the cost was losing custody of her children.
I think we all kind of have this little nosiness, but to know that that was your home is a different level of just gut punch. The very next day, there was some commotion. They were the cops are looking for the kids. The cops are looking for the kids. And they're what are we going to do with Shay Shay? And that's what they would call me. And the issue what I had learned later was that I was the only one that didn't have a father. everyone else could go to their fathers, and in like an attempt to kind of keep the kids, because they knew that mom was arrested. So how do we do it? What do we do with the kids? And it was really scary. I think there was a phone call. Somebody convinced somebody to bring me in. That was the first time that I had the beginning of my relationship with like black trash bags, because the police officer that had escorted us into the home was just like, what clothes are yours? Let's put them in here. And that was kind of the very start of like something that was happening that I've never experienced before. And so we went through the home. We were grabbing like clothes, and the house was also in disarray. It was just like such an eerie feeling to be in there. And that would be the same bag that I would carry into my first placement. And so as you're unpacking, I'm just removing things out of a black plastic garbage bag. But this is like a trash bag, right? This is where people put trash in. And so I don't know if they recognized the psyche at that time, like what that meant, because it just felt like it was temporary. But also like I went from having a whole room of items and things to like just like clothes and a couple bears. And that was kind of what I would have. It was just like such an eerie feeling to be in there. I was 6 at the time. Shortly after, maybe a couple weeks later, I would turn 7. And I spent my 7th birthday in a foster home.
Cash couldn't understand the full story of what was happening. Now, she knows that her mother had been arrested for selling drugs, but at 6, there wasn't a way for her to understand what had happened. Entering the foster care system could have meant that she was going to a safer environment, but it was a path that her and her siblings had no control over.
I was born and raised in the state of Kansas. In some sense, I was a middle child. And so I definitely was kind of like this like moderator in between, kind of didn't take sides. And on the other end, I was very quiet, is what I was told. And I also, because I think I have so much vivid memories, I think I just took in a lot and didn't say a lot. Whereas my sister, who was a year older, she was kind of opposite of me. She was like a leader in charge, kind of operated in this, like, I'm the older sibling here. And I just kind of follow along and support it. I also know that I was very smart. We didn't have a stable educational life growing up, obviously. So even one time I remember a principal bringing us home. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock because no one had picked us up. There was truancy issues, etc. So despite not being in school consistently, it was something that I enjoyed at the time. And I felt like I knew things, I understood things. That was the thing that I knew was going to be constant, was like the school. And I went through 7 different placements in 7 years. And in there, I think there was about 4 or 5 different schools from elementary to middle. And we also switched towns. And so remember, like, not only I'm trying to build friendships, but I'm losing that as well. But it was just school. It was like, it was there. Luckily, foster care system didn't change that.
Cash and her siblings were shuffled in and out of homes, sometimes together, sometimes separated. They changed school multiple times. They moved between towns and eventually across states. Cash thrived in school. And even if she had to change schools, there was an anchor for her in learning. It was always a place where she had the answer.
Parallel to that as well, I would say the church. And I say church as opposed to saying like a specific religion, because it was the church for me. It was like the people in the church. It was like, hey, life is crazy, this messaging, but like there's hope. And so I think that was something that I found out to be consistent. So it was definitely the education and the church throughout my upbringing that I think I leaned more into. Up until I was 7, I was actually in and out of the care of like relatives.
Cash didn't learn until she was an adult that the family that had taken care of her on and off during the first 6 years had tried to keep her.
So there was periods of times when my mother no longer had rigorous rights over us at certain points of my upbringing. And then I say us because there were 5 siblings.
It wasn't until her mom lost custody that she officially entered the foster care system.
I remember when I was 7, that was it. We went to court, said goodbye to my mom, and then I went into the foster care system. I think it was a numbness. I felt like I was going through motions. I was just being told what to do. I didn't have agency. I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know the social worker. I wasn't with the sibling. I had no comfort. It's kind of like, she's your responsibility now. My youngest sibling at the time was, I believe, 2. And then, and my older sibling was 8. So we were all relatively young. And in the state of Kansas, it's predominantly white population. And so I went into my first foster home, which was a very temporary placement. It was a white family. And that to me was like, okay, what does this mean? What's happening here? And I think that was my first kind of eye-opening that I wasn't with family. The issues that kind of derive from this foster care system. It's like, I think the core of it is like a brokenness. And brokenness is the same thing that you see, whether this is divorces or, the prison industrial system. There's like a underlying brokenness that kind of creates additional problems. And that definitely was my story as well.
One of the things that resonated with me was Cash talking about how she didn't have a consistent person. The one that is going to help you and explain what's going on. About 10 years ago, I started volunteering as a CASA, and that's CASA, which is Court Appointed Special Advocate. This program started in King County. It's now national. In your area, it may be called something different. It is made up of volunteers that take on cases, and unlike a social worker or an attorney, that CASA is only there to advocate for the child. The part that I love most about being a CASA is that it's the only person that will talk to the kid, get information about the case, and then in court, they testify to the child's wants. It doesn't mean that the child always gets what they want, but it gives them a voice in a system that has muted them for years. Unfortunately, in Cash's case, she didn't have access to someone that was advocating for her.
We all were separated at the time. So I had my youngest brother, because he was 2, it was relatively easy to find him a home. And then I had a younger sibling or sister. She went to the care of her father's family. There's me, I'm the 3rd. And then I went into a temporary placement, and so did the sister that was 8 years old at the time. And then the oldest sibling, who would have been 9, she was actually adopted far before I knew about, when she was actually just a baby. We went from having family to all of a sudden I was in this like dark world by myself. And so that's kind of where it all started.
In the photos that Cash shared, she looks like such a sweet kid, joyful, despite all of the challenges she was going through. Cash wasn't just adjusting to being separated from her mom, but also her siblings. Over the next 10 years, there were times where they were placed together, but usually they were separated.
There was periods of time when I would live with 1 or 2 of my other siblings for maybe a year at a time. But what I do remember is what they called visitations. And to this day, I actually still have photos. We would meet somewhere like halfway between all of us, like a McDonald's or just an open park. And we would just visit our siblings during that time. It was kind of a somber, sad feeling. I would see like, I don't know how often, I want to say it was like maybe yearly. I would see my little brother. He would get older. And I think as he got older, he didn't really understand why he was there. He had gotten adopted relatively quickly as well. I think that's something that happens in younger children as opposed to older. And so I remember in the photos, I can remember like in the background, like when I look at a photo, just thinking like I was very sad that day and I was holding him close because I knew I would have to say goodbye. But yeah, that was kind of the extent of what it meant to keep us together. And there was a time when 3 of us were in one household, and that was a unique time. But that also was very short-lived.
And there were times when she was in homes where the people there didn't have the tools or ability to care for her the way she needed. Who doesn't love the finer things in life? I'm all about a little luxury, but let's be real. It's not always in the budget. That's until I found Quince. I've been living in my new silk skirt. Best part, it's washable, so no more expensive trips to the dry cleaners. Quince has become my go-to for luxury essentials that are actually affordable. From 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters starting at just $50 to washable silk tops and dresses. And I'm not a big jewelry person, but my daughter Brie is, and she is a big fan of their selection and prices. Quince offers all these premium pieces at 50 to 80% less than similar brands. It's luxury I can feel good about, affordable, beautiful, and guilt-free. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/Brit for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/Brit. Quince.com/Brit. I want to take a minute and talk about hormone harmony. It isn't just for menopause, even though I was thrown into that last year. Finding a product that helps regulate my symptoms has been so crucial. Whether it's hot flashes, night sweats, or those racing thoughts and low moods, I've been able to use Hormone Harmony to help me feel like myself again. This isn't just a product for somebody that's going through menopause. It can help you at any stage in your life to help maintain optimal hormone levels. I also love Happy Mammoth's Complete Gut Repair. With the Complete Gut Repair, when I'm traveling, I can make sure that I continue to feel like myself, even with the time zone changes and dysregulation to my sleep. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com using the code YouProbably at checkout. That's happymammoth.com with the code YouProbably.
¿Dónde están los $5 millones que me robaste?
Gloria tendrá que encontrar el dinero. Su vida y la de su hijo dependen de ello.
Hay que acorralar a la viuda.
¡Tengo mucho miedo, mamá!
El peor de los caminos será el único posible.
A mí no me importa ir a la cárcel con tal de salvar a mi hijo.
En la nueva superserie de Telemundo.
Esta mujer es clave. Que empiece la cacería.
La Jefa. Martes 18 de febrero a las 10:09 Centro por Telemundo.
It wasn't until she was placed with an older woman named Wanda that she finally felt seen.
She was one of my first foster parents. She was my first permanent home. We were given, our plastic garbage bags, and she took it. She felt warm and loving. I think I saw my family in her because she was a Black woman. And I think that was in hindsight, I know that it was important to me at that time because I just needed to have some comfort. And she was older, like grandma age, and I just felt like, oh, okay, this could be kind of what I'm used to, the people that were taking care of me. And it also helped that I was with a sibling. I think we got some months under our feet with this foster care thing, this is our life. And so there's a little level of comfort.
Wanda welcomed Cash and one of her siblings into her home. She created a comfortable, safe place where they were able to thrive.
But yeah, I remember her greenhouse. And this is the state of Kansas in a very, very, very small town. And so there's brick roads. And it's so funny because if your mind went to the Wizard of Oz, Yellow Brick Road or any of that stuff, then you're right. Because there was a brick road in that town. One middle school, one high school, very small town. And I remember her street. I remember it being very small, couple houses, and her home was pretty large. I think I was maybe surprised because we had lived in apartments up until that time. She had this screened in front porch which is like, you know, in Kansas, there's all types of bugs. It's this huge, heavy door. And then there's wooden floors. And it was also like very brown inside. I just remember that. And she showed us our room. We got to share a room. We had our own beds. And it was next to her room. And I felt comfortable there. She was also a social worker. So I think that there was just a level of like knowledge that she had and the way that she was carrying herself as she was introducing us into her home. My sibling and I would end up staying with Wanda for about 3 years. Looking back, just like, I think that was needed. I realized I was even better at school. I went to like a math contest and I had friends and we would walk to school together. You know, this is how you know when where friends are, because you would just hop on your bike and go find out where the other bikes were. And then you would know they would be at that person's house. She's not the generation of my biological mom. She's like the generation prior. It was like I got this old school upbringing and learning.
You can hear how Cash's mood shifts when she talks about Wanda. I could see her light up. Cash got to play and learn and do all the things that kids should be doing. This was such a pivotal time for her. After about 1.5 years with Wanda, their time would come to an end. For now, another home had come up that could bring more of the siblings together.
When we had left Wanda, the hope was that we had at least 3 of the siblings together. So the state was trying, and we went to another home in a different town. And this was different than Wanda because, again, we went back to a family that was the opposite race. It was a 2-parent household this time. And then they already had children that they were either fostering or had adopted. And so it was just kind of like this very different story. When we think about Wanda and the cultural sense of that, my hair is taken care of. There was a lot of things that were done that kind of going to be undone in the next experience. This family, 2-parent household, they had adopted 2 children. One was about 1 year or 2 older, maybe 2 or 3 years older than me. And then one was a child who was the same age as my younger brother. So in total, there was 1, 2, 3, 4 children between the ages of 10 and 12. And then 2 that were both like 5. The house looked small in the front. However, they had added on additional space in the back. But it was so funny because like they did not mesh well. It was like the new part of the house and the old part of the house. And so they originally only had a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and they were able to create an additional 3 beds, another bathroom, and then like a side porch. It was like really big. And I remember my sibling and my older sister and I, we had the furthest room in the back. Then the diagonal to us was one of the other foster children. And then this large room closer in the middle of the house was the adopted child who was older. There was like this little foyer area, and then there's a kitchen. And then my brother shared a room with the youngest child. They were both for 5 at the time. And it was like a Jack and Jill. So there was a bathroom that connected to the master. So I just remember the home. I remember just being excited originally because like my brother was there, like, hello, my little baby brother, yay, you know. Kind of soured pretty quickly. She was a stay-at-home mom. The father worked. He was an electrician. I always thought that was like so cool. Again, like I had my brother. It was going to be great, you know, but it was very clear that there was like different treatments. And I felt like even just the money, like you could see where it was going and where it wasn't going. It's hard when you have adopted children and foster children because unfortunately we were treated differently. And I think that sometimes people can have biological children and then they can adopt or foster. And maybe there are some differences there as well. But what I felt and what I know is that we were treated differently, the foster children from the adopted children. And what that looked like was that, you know, obviously her adopted child was going to have her own room and her adopted child was going to get a lot of different things. And whereas like my room, I think it could have definitely been a closet, but like we barely fit a bunk bed in there. And then we ended up, the house wanted a hamster, and the hamster got put in our room because it stunk. And I remember her saying that. She's like, well, it stinks. I don't want it out here, so put it in your guys' room.
Cash was realizing the realities of unequal treatment in what was meant to be her home. It's really hard for me to hear how matter-of-factly she can tell these stories. It speaks to how normalized this all was for her. In places where she was supposed to have a home, she didn't.
One of the things that I will never forget was just like going for school shopping, and me being the person I am, the kind-hearted, Cash that I've been since I was younger. I was always mindful of the people I wanted to share. I wanted to, that was a part of who I was. And so I knew we got these vouchers. I don't think that they have vouchers now, but at the time they had vouchers you can use at a store to be able to purchase items for foster youth. And I think at the time it was probably like we were able to get like 5 or so clothes. I got 1 outfit. My sibling got 2 outfits. The other foster child got 3. And then her child got like 10 outfits. And it was like Aeropostale. This is like the Aeropostale, Abercrombie and Finch, whatever they're called, phase. So like she got all this stuff. And I remember I had that 1 outfit and I wore it to my picture day, but that was the only outfit I had that was new, and everything else was like old clothes. And I remember like thinking that wasn't fair. Like, I feel like we all should have been able to get, use the voucher. Like the voucher is for the foster kids, not for the adopted kids. I don't know that I felt necessarily close to her. I remember she made us call her mom. Calling somebody mom is significant, but because everybody else in the house was calling her mom, she's like, well, you all call me mom. And I didn't even call Wanda mom, but Wanda was more of a mom than anybody, right? I hadn't called anybody mom since my mom. So that was also an interesting thing that I felt like was kind of manipulative. I think it was also like kind of a glorifying moment for that family. They would go to church and like, here's this white family taking care of these like Black children. And there's 3 of them, plus they adopted these 2. One also was non-white. And then they had another foster, like this big old like benevolent family. And so I think that they used that to kind of like glorify themselves.
Children deserve to have a true home, not just a space to sleep, but one that provides love and care. And the support Cash needed was not just a new outfit, but a place that could help her navigate her traumatic start to life. Cash never felt she was truly cared for in the home. Instead, she was left to be abused by someone else in the house.
But the real abuse would be actually at the hands of the older adopted child. I was a girl, and this older adopted child was also a girl. I remember she had kind of ranked who she liked. She really liked the other foster child, and so they would always spend the night in her room. And then one day I get the invite. Towards the end of when we were getting ready to leave the household, which was like ended in chaos, I remember just being grateful that was over, because like it never felt right to me. I never felt okay. I never told anybody. I didn't tell my sister. And I just felt I felt disgusted. I felt like, is this normal? But yeah, it was a very dark time for me in that household.
Next time, we continue with Cash's story. You can support the show by joining us on Apple Podcasts or Patreon. Episodes are available early and ad-free. Our executive producer is me, Brittany Ard. Our senior producer and editor is Sydney Gladue. Story consulting by Mariah Gossett. Sound engineering by Sean Simmons. Graphic design by Nigella Shama. Opening theme by Youth Star and Miscellaneous. You probably think This Story's About You is a production of BDE Unlimited Productions. You can follow me for updates at brittany.ard on all social media platforms. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. Give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I love responding to comments on Spotify. Trolling the trolls is my new favorite pastime.